if you are not new, if you're a regular Jimmy and Joe, you know that our playoff predictions are due, and that's what we're doing next here on the show. We'll do playoff predictions, and then we'll get into the season-long lineup presented by Underdog Fantasy at the end, if that works for you guys. I'll let one of you guys go first. Garrett, maybe we haven't talked playoffs with you all that recently, so we'll start with you, and I'll give you a second to pull up that graphic. There it goes. You've got an interesting four for the folks on the podcast side. You've got Alabama as the number one team in the country, Clemson at number two, Penn State at number three, and Arizona State at number four, getting that first round bye. Take it away, my friend.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is for anybody out there who questions me on this, I did my math, but then my dog ate my homework. So don't ask me about the exact particulars on some of these. I did do the math, though. I did figure out how all of this works. No, I'm really high on Alabama this year. I think that Alabama is going to be a very good football team. Love their defense. Love a lot of what they have going on. Yes, I know they just lost the running back, but still pretty high on what they're going to be able to do and accomplish this year. And also kind of like the way some of their schedule sets up. I know that it's not necessarily the easiest schedule we've ever seen, but in terms of what I think that they are and the boost that the new offensive coordinator coming in is going to end up being, I'm pretty high on Alabama. So I have them as my one seed. I do have them winning out, going undefeated. I also have the same for Clemson. Have Clemson going undefeated as well. Just think that the committee is going to respect Bama's undefeated a little bit more than they're going to respect Clemson's. I do have Penn State losing in Columbus, but then avenging themselves in the Big Ten championship games. That's kind of why I have them at the number three. Is they're a one-loss team? I've got Arizona State as my number four. I think they're going to have a really good season. Just really, really pumped about them. Kind of filling out some of that, looking up at kind of that Bama quadrant. I got Texas and Texas Tech because I know that the committee loves finding a way to put fun matchups on that first little round. And I can't imagine anything more fun than kind of matching those two teams up and letting the hate just spew over. So I got them up there with Texas advancing. Obviously, Ohio State and Georgia Tech up in that Clemson quadrant. I don't think it's controversial to say that Ohio State's going to be good. I think they're still going to be a good team. They might struggle a little bit out of the gate, but I do think they're going to be a very good football team. I do have them winning this week one game pretty close. It's going to be tight, but I do have them winning a pretty tight first game of the season. And then I think it's the Penn State. And I do also think I think I had them losing also to Michigan and Ann Arbor because I just don't believe it until I see it. I'm sorry, I just don't. So you can get over the hump and then come complain at me. But that's that. I've got Georgia Tech also in there. I think all of us have been pretty high on what Georgia Tech can do and get done. So I'm going to throw them in there as well. Georgia and Oregon. I know Oregon's the one that you guys aren't going to like, but I don't care. I think they're a good football team. I believe in Dan Lanning, and I just think that they're proven enough. I believe that Dan Lanning deserves our benefit of the doubt right now. He's done a bunch with what he's had. He's found ways to motivate that team. I think, Bo Nix wasn't necessarily a guy that we were excited about when he showed up there. Dan Lanning helped turn him around to get stuff going. Whoever that quarterback ends up being, I think is going to be just fine. And then I think a not so controversial would be Notre Dame and Boise State in that last little quadrant. My final four is going to be Bama versus Notre Dame, with Bama advancing, Clemson and Georgia, with Clemson finally getting over the hump, and then Clemson winning a title this year. I think that they're the best team in the country. I think that Cade Klubnik is going to be your best quarterback this year. I think he's going to go off for all the yards and all the touchdowns and everything that he wants. Just really excited about his game. And I think that with the receiving core that they have, the way that I expect them to play on offense, I think they'll be better on defense, but I don't necessarily think they're going to have to be, because I think Clemson's offense is going to be high octane from the word go. So, yeah, give me Clemson winning a championship and letting the rumors of, Dabo not being able to adjust to this era and all of that stuff, let that fly out of the window, right? Go Clemson.
Yeah,
So you have – go ahead, Mitch.
Well, I was going to say 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams getting in at the expense of 2 Big 12 teams and 2 ACC teams. Trey, I know you are not necessarily on the shared bandwagon that Garrett and I are fueling the furnace with to try and get other teams, multiple teams from Big 12 and ACC in. I'll turn it over to you. If you got a question there, go for it. If not, also I'll let you go next on your playoff picks.
Yeah, I know you said the math might get a little fuzzy, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, Garrett. But so I'm
Yeah.
I'm guessing Oregon 2 losses.
Yeah, it would be so the way that I had it rotating is Ohio State has one loss in the season, but they had the tiebreaker over Penn
Hmm.
State by beating them. Penn State has a tiebreaker over Oregon by beating them. And
Gotcha.
Oregon, it's all a bunch of one losses, but then it's the
Sure.
Ohio State Penn State matchup in the conference championship game.
Okay. And then do you have Tech 11-1 going into the Big 12 championship, or do you
I,
have them getting that 9 seed with
I
3
do
total
believe so,
losses?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I think that's the path. So
I'd
I'm
have to go back
guessing.
and check my notes, but that is what I think that I did to get them there.
Listen, and I don't want anyone to hear me saying this as someone that doesn't want to see 2 Big 12 and 2 ACC, because I would love nothing more than getting multiple representatives from the Big 12 and ACC. I think that would be great for college football, and I think there's deserving teams, and there was probably multiple deserving Big 12 teams last year, even though they only got one bid. But I just have trouble seeing the world where both of those get 2 teams in. And I know that that's pessimistic, and I know, and don't hear me saying that I
Fun
don't want
police.
it to happen, but I
My
do have to be the fun police a little bit. And I just wonder if the committee would let that happen, especially when you have Notre Dame as high as 5. You have to have that spot for the G5, of course. And I don't know, like
my
I want it to happen.
my big thing on this is just I'm also not as big on the rest of the tops of the conferences. I think there really are a whole lot of good teams, but like I could see, for example, in the SEC, any combination of Florida, South Carolina, LSU, Texas A&M just beating up on each other, and then all sitting somewhere at 9-3, right? Where just none
For
of them
sure.
are going to get in. I also feel the same way about teams like Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, like a bunch of them where it's just like, hey, I think a lot of the Big Ten teams are just going to find a way to stay kind of middle high in the pack and not quite jump up over the top. I don't necessarily believe in any of their clutch genes right now. I don't think that there's a good enough team to overcome that kind of a thing, right? And so that's why I think that this is a real opening for some pretty good conference situations. For like example, Georgia Tech really loved the schedule. I think they're going to be able to go on a big run and win a whole bunch of games, possibly stick close with a couple of teams. And so, like, yeah, I'm going to stick them at the 10 seed because I think that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, far be it from me to say that the super conferences aren't going to get their way because monies and dollars and matchups and whatever else, right? I think we all know in the back of our minds there's a good chance that that's the reality.
Yeah, I think the way that it does happen is if both a Texas Tech and a Georgia Tech, or whoever those teams of choice are for you personally, the listener, the runners up in the Big 12 and ACC are 11-1 going into those games. That's the way that they have a shot in my mind, because that's what happened to SMU last year, and that's why SMU got in over Alabama. They were 11-1 going into the ACC championship, and they took a second loss instead of a third loss. So if they
Yeah.
both just take a second loss, then it's certainly possible.
Well, so Trey, go ahead and roll into your playoff bracket right now. I think you make a lot of good points. I'm curious to see how you navigate the SEC and the Big Ten, beating each other up probably on one hand, but also getting maybe more than 3 teams in. Your top 4 seeds also rolling with Alabama at 1, Ohio State at 2, Clemson at 3, and Penn State at 4. I'll let you break down your bracket.
Yeah, very similar to Garrett. I'm high on Alabama this year. I think that offense is going to be just absolutely scary with a quarterback that knows how to run the offense. No disrespect to Jalen Milroe, but he was a square peg in a round hole in that offense that Kalen DeBoer wanted to run last year. You get Ryan Grubb back, and I think it's going to be fireworks. And I think there's a lot of talent on defense, especially in the secondary. So I have Alabama across all of college football. My I guess somewhat hot take is I have 0 undefeated teams this year. If you've been following along on our graphics, the late in preview season here, you might have noticed that everybody has at least one loss. I do not think there will be an undefeated team in all of college football this year. That's how strongly I believe in the parity. So I have a 12-1 Alabama getting the 1 seed over a 12-1 Ohio State. I'll talk about their one loss here in just a second. And then I have Clemson going 12-1 in the ACC, and Penn State getting the 4 seed at 11-2, with both of their losses coming to Ohio State. So I don't think Penn State gets penalized for playing that extra game against Ohio State too much, and they fall down to the 4 seed. Georgia, I have losing to Alabama in the SEC championship. They'll be the 5 and slot against Boise State. I really wanted to find someone other than Boise State to put in here, but it's just really hard with the schedule that the Broncos have, the talent that the Broncos have. It's hard to find a world where they're not 11-1. And if you want to put a Tulane in there, they have multiple games against power conference competition and a tough American schedule. If you want to put a UTSA in there, they basically got to run the table in the American after, hopefully in our minds, losing to Texas A&M week 1. If you want to put a James Madison in there, right? Like, I think James Madison of all those teams has the best shot to get a Power 5 win when they go to Louisville week 2. I have Louisville 10-2, and I think that would be a huge win if they're able to knock off the Cardinals somehow. But too much just meleeing, bare knuckle brawling in the Sun Belt for my liking to pick them over a Boise State. So they're the 12 seed until proven otherwise, and they're the G5 representative until proven otherwise. I've got Georgia knocking off Boise State to advance to play Penn State. In the top quadrant of the bracket, I just basically made this into the SEC corner. And I think the committee, in my bracket overall, I have 4 SEC and 3 Big Ten. And I think that pendulum kind of shifts this year towards the SEC. It was towards the Big Ten last year. I think the committee kind of throws the Big Ten a bone and puts all of the SEC teams on one side of the bracket. So in this top corner, I've got a 10-2 LSU taking on a 10-2 Texas. That game would be at Death Valley. So I have LSU advancing to take on Alabama, and then Alabama and Georgia advancing to the semifinal on that side of the bracket. Georgia upsetting Penn State in that quarterfinal round. On the other side, it gets a little spicy. So I've got Kansas State winning the Big 12. I said that earlier in the show when we were previewing Farmageddon. And then this is where it gets just a little, I tied myself in a knot. I texted Mitch at 7 a.m. this morning and said, hey, could you hold off on posting the ACC graphic? Because I tied myself in a bit of a knot. And he said, LOL, it went out 5 minutes ago. And I said, okay, we ride. It's fine. So I've got SMU in the 10th spot. And a lot of people think SMU is going to take a step back this year. I don't necessarily... I hear that. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I'm not saying that that's something that's not going to happen. But I like the schedule. I like that their biggest games are at home. I see the path to them going 10-2 and getting back to Charlotte. And then in my world, SMU is 10-3. Texas Tech is 10-3. They're up for one of those last at-large spots, and I think we really get into the gross beauty contest of comparing losses. And we start to look at losses for SMU being a little bit higher quality than the losses for Texas Tech. And that's why I gave SMU the nod there at the 10. I have Kansas State beating SMU, moving on to play Ohio State. Then the last little corner there, boy, would this be fun. Notre Dame at the 6 and Michigan at the 11.
Wow.
But here's how Michigan gets there. They start 3-3. And then reel off.
Keep going. I'm loving it.
And then reel off 6 straight wins, including knocking off the Buckeyes for like a 10th straight year to punch their ticket at 9-3. And it's gross, and I hear you, but that's how much parity I think is going to happen this year in college football. I've got Michigan continuing that hot streak, knocking off Notre Dame in South Bend in the first round. Ohio State and Clemson advance to the semifinal, and then I've got Georgia over Clemson in the national championship game. The defense rests. Let me hear it.
My goodness.
Roast me.
You know, seeing that Maze M right there, Trey, I knew I liked you.
That is that's some takes right there.
This is for fun. And real quick,
is.
I should have said this off the top because this should, and maybe I'll edit this. We can edit this into the front of the video. If you are going to just send me, and I think Josh Pate said something along the lines of this the other day when he made his playoff picks. So Josh Pate co-signed on this. If you're just going to clown me without sharing your picks, I'm just going to ignore you.
Yeah.
Like, right. I'm not like, this is for fun, guys. Like, this is like, we don't know who's going to be the 11 and 10 seed. It's going to be
nobody can.
Who had Indiana last year. So if you're just going to clown me for being bold and having fun, you can go somewhere else with that. And we're just going to have fun over here.
Well, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones, and there's some other shows that I think have put out these disclaimers as well. One, nobody, this is an impossible exercise. We are setting ourselves up for failure by putting our picks out there on the line and then going an extra step further to show the work, right? I released an article to our Jimmys and Joes over on our Substack that everybody else will get tomorrow or Wednesday. But that was the kind of the introduction to my article was, hey, we're taking the step forward by showing our math here. And so we want to have that discussion, and I would love to know who your 12 picks are. I want to know who your
just
conference
share the 12
championships
with
are.
me.
Exactly. But then share them and show me your work with how you got there. Because even though you may be coming across this clip in the pod or our graphic in a millisecond on Twitter, you may not be following the show and come across it because someone in your social circle shares it. And it's really easy to have a snap judgment to it in that one moment. But the point of these graphics that we want to convey, and obviously our Jimmys and Joes know from our preview season, we did over 30 episodes setting up these graphics in the preview season. Like, there are literally hundreds of hours of research gone into this. Doesn't mean any of it's right, but boy, the effort, the passion is there. And at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, it's fun. We're having a good time with this. There are some rooting interests we have in these graphics, and we know that not all of them are going to be right, which, Trey, I think is a fantastic disclaimer. Thank you for setting me up. Let's go to my bracket now with no strings attached and no possible way that you could pin me in a corner here. Let's talk my bracket. Unlike Trey, I have just fully taken the bait on at least one undefeated team this year, and that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm going to go with them as my top overall seed. Is this the year they break through? I don't know, but I'm really hoping it is because, boy, that roster is intimidating, and I love their coordinators. Clemson's my 2 seed. Georgia is my SEC champ and my 3 seed. And the Texas Tech Red Raiders, the Quentin Joynerless Red Raiders, are my 4 seed. Again, I put this out ahead of that injury news. It is what it is. In my other seedings, we have Boise State getting the 12, Georgia Tech making it to the playoff in the 11 spots, the Iowa Hawkeyes riding to the 10 spots, Alabama at 9, Arizona State at 8, Texas at 7, Ohio State at 6, and Notre Dame at 5. So quadrant by quadrant, give me Alabama to beat Arizona State, the Big 12 runner-up. I do have 2 teams from the Big 12 getting in, Arizona State and Texas Tech. I think Arizona State is probably going to be a little bit better this year than they were last, but they're not taking anybody by surprise this year. And like you guys, I am also high on Alabama. Not number 1 team in the country high. I do have them losing a couple of road games this year, but I really like the roster and I like the system in place for the Tide this year. So Alabama moves on. Notre Dame will beat Boise State. I've got Texas over Iowa. Hawkeyes, thanks for playing. I am crossing my fingers that this offense works. And I tweeted a reel on our Twitter account and put it on our Instagram as well. That scene in Oppenheimer when he's talking about quantum physics and nuclear fission and saying how they both can't be true, but they are. It's paradoxical, yet it works. That's what Iowa football feels like to me if it does explode this year, is we're just not used to them having a good offense. But maybe Mark Gronowski and Tim Lester are the recipe, the secret formula that we need, and the Hawkeyes can go 10-2. There's definitely a path to get them to the playoff based off of their home road splits, and I'm going to believe in the Hawkeyes this year. I'm higher on them than my in-laws are, so take that for what it's worth, a grain of salt, all the grains of salt if you want. And then I've got Georgia Tech making the playoff as well. They will lose to Ohio State in that 6-11 matchup. I'm also high on the Buckeyes. I like them to make it to the Big Ten championship game, but I'm going to take Penn State to not beat them once. I'm going to take them to beat them twice. I know how crazy that sounds, but it's where we are. The semifinals will be Clemson over getting to the semifinals. Clemson will beat Texas. Georgia will beat Ohio State. Penn State beats Alabama, and Notre Dame beats Texas Tech. That gives us a semifinal matchup of Penn State and Notre Dame, a rematch from last year, and Clemson and Georgia. I've got Penn State and Clemson moving on to my national championship. and I have the Clemson Tigers ascending back to the mountaintop of college football. I think Cade Klubnik could be the Heisman winner this year. Dabo Swinney may be the coach of the year, depending on how well Clemson actually does. But it's been too long since Clemson has been a legitimate title contender. I think they put all of those doubts to rest this year. I think their roster is fantastic. I do think I trust their offense a little bit more than Penn State's if you put them head to head. So give me the Clemson Tigers to hoist the national championship trophy at the end of the year.
Hey, I like it. I love the work, and I love you going out on the limb for Iowa. I love that call.
It is a limb.
There's a few teams in the Big Ten, and I think the recurring theme that I keep coming back to in the Big Ten, and why I think the Big Ten only gets 3 teams in this year, is that that middle tier has risen up so much that we can't just pencil in 1 or 2 at the top to go undefeated, right? We can't just pencil in an Oregon to go undefeated because there's no one in the middle to challenge them, because there's a Washington and an Iowa and just so many other opportunities for loss outside of playing Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. So I think that Iowa is a perfect example of that. They have those big games at home. It's a fun call out for a team that we're really excited to root for this year. And again, you guys really believe in 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, and I love you guys for that. And I love you for sticking to your principles.
I just believe more in Georgia Tech, and I think that Mitch and I can ride that thing until it's done. But we're gonna find that rambling wreck, and we're gonna hopefully ride it all the way to glory. I think we both had them against Ohio State in our first round, which would be a lot of fun. So yeah, I think our only real disagreement there was just the Arizona State Texas Tech flip right there, and then who gets in the Big Ten, and but yeah, I think your graphic's pretty good, Mitch. I like this bracket a lot. It looks pretty similar to a bracket I made. So I'm going to just say that you did pretty good. And man, what a genius over here.
They are rather similar. There's no doubt about that. All right. Well, like we said, write in. Let us know where you agree, where you disagree. Show your work. Let us know who you would have in that 12-team bracket. We would love to get as much feedback as possible and to be able to review this as we go along. I mean, gosh, do any of us think that this is even going to survive the month of October? Probably not, but boy, it's going to be a lot of fun getting there.